Yeah, it looks like everyone can hear you. It's typing in the chat now.
Okay. So yeah, we have confirmation that I'm audio. We'll give everybody a minute or two to settle in here. Gentlemen, are we ready, you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep.
All right. Let's get the party started. So, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Thursday. Let me first give everyone on this call a big thank you. We really appreciate you taking time away from your Thursday, right around lunch. So we hopefully got everyone before they get into that 2 o'clock. Where's the coffee at? Got a couple of great guests, but before we get rolling, why don't I take a moment and introduce myself? I'm going to moderate this discussion today. Skyrocket your lead gen and sales with the right tools. My name is David Daly. I am with PropLogix, and there we go. We've all had this before. I know. Another day of cold calling and missed quotas. I love it, Lindsay. So my name is David Daly. I'm with PropLogix, and you can see here a couple of wonderful guests that are going to provide an introduction, a little bit about myself. I am with PropLogix. We're a tech-enabled due diligence firm providing services to the real estate industry. So we do everything from lien searches to estoppels. We have a couple hundred employees. We do surveys, notary network, payoffs, ton of products. If you're interested in working with PropLogix, you can investigate at proplogix.com. A couple of kids in college, 2 dogs, a wife, relocated from Chicago about 7 years ago to join PropLogix. I currently reside in the west coast of Florida, and I'm super appreciative to have the opportunity today to have this discussion with Jonathan Holfinger and Justin Williams. So with that, super pleased that you gentlemen can take time away from your busy schedules to join this discussion today. Justin, if you wouldn't mind providing for the audience just a little information about you and the company, that would be extremely helpful.
Yeah, so I'm based here in Columbus, Ohio, big Ohio State Buckeye fan. I lead sales for Razi and product development for a hot lead solution. I've been in sales for 25 years, started my career at OtterBox, which might have saved your iPhone from cracking a few times. I won a Flying Otter Award for helping them go from 10 million to 2 billion in revenue over a few years. And I've done corporate sales for Amazon and scaled sales teams from 2 people to 25 and built tools and processes to support that growth. Having said all that, I get employed because I'm fairly good at building a pipeline and working those leads efficiently to revenue. And I'm here to share some of the learnings along the way and then some of the success stories of people using our hot lead solution.
Well, thank you, Justin. And for the audience, I had the opportunity to meet Justin in Oklahoma at one of the Alta conferences, and extremely intelligent, big fan of the company, big fan of Lily and Robert. Some of the tech they're building is cutting edge, and I know a lot of people innovative is used quite a bit, but really a solid group, and really pleased to have you join us today, Justin. So thank you, sir. Mr. Holfinger, please.
Yeah.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan. I too live in Columbus, Ohio. I run a family of title insurance companies as well as a real estate focused law firm. So we do business mostly in the southern half of Ohio and then northern Kentucky and central Kentucky. And our model, I guess you would say, is that classic retail title insurance agency. We've got a lot of offices that are on Main Street in small towns across the street from the courthouse, right? So we do some business in metropolitan areas, but also a lot of kind of that classic local based title work, as well as a lot of real estate transactional problem solving. And while I am an Ohio State Buckeye fan, I would say I'm probably a bigger Columbus Crew fan. And last night I got to witness my beloved crew, fall to Inter Miami and Leo Messi. But I did get to see the greatest of all time come to our town and show us how it's done. So at least we got to see that as a consolation prize.
That's awesome. I'm sure we've got some fans on this call as well. And I'm a Notre Dame fan, guys. So, I don't want to hear about the Ohio State. Let's keep it real. And we also have joining us because we wanted to make this as painless as possible for myself, candidly. And Lindsay Gordon, our Director of Marketing. She's all things PropLogic. Lindsay's joining behind the scenes. So, Lindsay, thank you. Much appreciate your assistance in helping navigate through the presentation today. And with that, let's just level set and just cover briefly what we're going to talk about today, just to give everybody some structure to this conversation. We're going to talk about the market. I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to be, but I do have a team. We're all out in the field every day working with, customers, prospects. We do know what we do, hear what's happening in the marketplace. Be curious, obviously, to hear some of that from you all today. We're going to talk about sales and strategy. Jonathan's going to give us some insights on what works for him, what he's seeing in the marketplace. We're going to talk about some of the trends in tech, and then we're going to close out this discussion with Justin giving everybody a preview about hot leads and how it could potentially help drive revenue to your business. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the market. And obviously everybody on this call, we're a real estate due diligence firm, right? We're all tied to the housing market. And I'm preaching to the choir here because it's been a challenging market, right? You had 2021, right? Things were amazing. The pandemic, it was like, what's going to happen to your business? I'm sure, Jonathan, right? Everybody was like, oh my goodness, we're going to do Ron, we're going to do drive-throughs. How are we going to do real estate transactions, right? And then it slingshots and just goes crazy. But the last year has been extremely challenging. And Lindsay, if you can go to the next slide. There's some additional data. If you look at it here, and I'll give this for a minute for everybody just to check it out. But last night I was just looking through some LinkedIn, and I noticed a post from Lance Lambert at Razi Club, and Lance was referencing a statistic from the National Association of Realtors. And in 2018 and 2019, before the pandemic, 4.09 existing home sales in 2023. And that before the pandemic, we were running at about 5 million, right? So if you look at what's happened over the last, 2 years, there's been a softening in the market. And I think what's important for this discussion and why we're even touching on the market is because this is a sales discussion about how do you grow your business. Well, there's less activity and it becomes more competitive. So, and what Razi and what Jonathan, what they're bringing to the table today, they're in it, right? Jonathan, you're living this every day, right? And you've seen the market. So we'll be interested to get some thoughts on that. But the intent here is to be able to provide some tools in a conversation that sparks a thought in your head as to, hey, are we doing everything we can as an organization to make sure that we're competitive, that we're engaging with our customers, and that we're doing everything we can to be successful for the team. So next slide, please, Lindsay, if you wouldn't mind. Here we go. So 7 out of 10 people are investing in ways to boost their pipeline. And I think one of the things that always sticks with me, having been tied to sales and as a passion of mine, you see these stories, and I what we call one from a number of years ago, where like the entire sales force was eliminated. And this is just my humble opinion, but in a tough market, it probably makes sense to double down on sales and marketing and customer experience. And that's a playbook that we've used at PropLogic. And 7 out of 10, according to Gartner, they're focused on pipeline, which correlates to sales. So I guess I would just leave it at a thought. Are you doing everything you can to be able to drive business? And how does sales play with your ops and your tech? And how does that all come together? And with that, Jonathan, you are on the forefront, right? Your team's out there and they're banging on the streets. So maybe you could speak a little bit to the audience as to what your playbook is and some of the thoughts you have on running an organization.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we represent some types of title companies that, can't do a one-size-fits-all approach. That, because of these local offices and because of the nature of our relationships with clients and our local communities, we've got to tailor our strategy to, the market we're in and the audience that we have. For example, if we're trying to establish a sales process or a sales campaign in Columbus or Cincinnati, that's going to look different and feel different than it is if I'm working in a small community like St. Clairsville, Ohio, or Chillicothe. So, we have different types of sales strategies that work based on where we are, and we have dedicated business development officers in our metropolitan markets in a way that we can't have that in our smaller communities and regions. So we tend to group our offices into regional areas, and then we have to have people that are knowledgeable in sales but are more relationship focused. So I think it's one of those challenges where when you build out a software system or you try to implement a company-wide process, it can be tricky because that may not work in all of the offices that you have. So, finding the right CRM, the right sales tools to support you, I think, is a part of the challenge. As far as, oh yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's helpful, Jonathan. What else are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we had for a while was kind of that big box CRM, a program that a lot of larger companies would have. We used it as a database for a number of things, and I think it became something where we didn't have the right expertise to manage that CRM because it was not tailored to the title business. It was not tailored to what we were doing, and therefore it became a repository of data, but it wasn't helping improve any sort of ROI on it, right? It wasn't improving our communications. It wasn't improving our sales results. And so we've recently gone through a process of trying to find a different CRM that was going to be able to handle our metropolitan markets where there's a lot of prospects out there, and you might have a very specific prospecting campaign you want to implement. But then in our smaller communities, there's really only a handful of people that we don't know. And so, you have a very different approach to people when you're in smaller communities than you do when you're in major cities. And so finding a CRM system that would allow us to structure sales teams to include dedicated sales staff on one hand, but then, what we call closing services staff on the other hand, where that's not their full-time job, was a little bit tricky. But, finding that right CRM that's focused on communication and what the outcome of that communication is, I think, is much more important than sort of tracking all of the data and just gathering information. Without using it, it doesn't really do you any good. So we've been trying to improve on that as a company. And basically, one of the things that came out of this was historically we had people that we called sales reps that also did closings. And so some of those sales reps became really important at doing a high volume of closings, whereas other salespeople didn't do a lot of closings. And so we had to divide our jobs up a little bit, make more clear what the job profile was between those that should be focused on client retention activities and those that should be focused on client acquisition activities. So that those who are dedicated for acquiring clients shouldn't be doing a lot of closings. And those that are dedicated to maintaining our relationships with existing clients should be doing a lot of closings. And separating expectations within the sales pipeline and within sort of metrics and goal setting, I think, was an important part of that.
Yeah, that's terrific, Jonathan. And to that point, I guess to this audience, how many dedicated sales reps do you have, right? So this is the first poll of the day. Give this a minute while everyone. Here we go. 41%, 38%. Okay, that's an interesting. So I have a little feedback. Do you guys hear that by chance? No. All right, terrific. All right, well, first of all, thank you for taking the polls. Second, based on those results, that lines up. So from our State of the Industry Survey 2024 that Lindsay and team just conducted, You can see 43% of the folks have a sales rep, right? And Jonathan touched on something, and Justin's going to speak towards this a little bit as well. But I think one of the things that's interesting, one size does not fit all, right? Some operations, whether it's geographically where it's at, whether it's a buyer or seller who's paying, right? Is it a 3-person attorney shop? Do they do multi-state? Are they working with work share agreements with the West Coast, right? There's no one size fits all. So there's really an answer here that is probably specific to your business. What I would say at PropLogix and what we look at, if this is any indicator or something that can be useful to you, we have a percentage of allocation that we run across the company, and we create a budget for the year. And typically we like to be somewhere between a 25 to 35% of our spend on sales, marketing, customer experience. So if, as a takeaway, if anybody would like to have a follow-up discussion, discuss in detail some things that you can be looking at, more than happy to dive down that discussion. But I do think it's important. We talked about it earlier. One of the things that I would not recommend in a market is to contract and to think that, sales will drive revenue for sure. And the people, Jonathan, you hit a very elegant point that we ourselves deal with at PropLogix: account management, churn, keeping customers. Whose job is it to retain them? Whose job is it to go get new customers? How do you win those new logos? And I think it's an important discussion internally for all companies as it relates to your business and driving revenue, right? So we're going to turn the page and cover some topics here real quick. So we've talked about tech. I think Jonathan did a wonderful job of laying out the importance of the people and how they play into the process, right? So you can have tech all day long and you can have the best tech, but it doesn't necessarily win without the right combination of people. That being said, I'd be curious, Jonathan, what is it? We just talked about CRM. You talked about making a change. What resonates with you with this slide, if you will?
Yeah, I think I've learned, being a tech forward thinker, that within our own company, not everybody can adapt to new tech as well as maybe I can. So I've had to learn to identify technology that is actually easy to implement and easy to use. That's what's going to be most effective. So finding tools that your people are going to want to use, I think, is really important, because we can have really advanced stuff that's highly technical, highly complex, can do a lot of things, but then you find that people don't leverage all those things, or they don't really understand all those, and you spend a lot of time training and retraining and trying to get people to use them. So when it comes to CRM, like I mentioned, I find that finding something that's simplified, that aligns with what you're trying to accomplish, is the best way to go about it, because your staff needs to want to use it. It needs to feel like it's providing, the majority of what their job requires. Sometimes people love to have ideas. Oh, if it could do this, that would be great. If it could do this other thing, that would be even better. But those are things that only apply to a certain amount of circumstances. And so I wouldn't get too caught up in thinking about, all of the bells and whistles of something. It's really its core has to be what you need. From an AI standpoint, when I think about that, I've done a fair amount of talking about AI over the last couple of years. And I found that for our business, sales and marketing is where AI can apply the most help. It can assist your team to do a better job with creating content, whether that's graphical content, written content, but it's definitely something where ChatGPT and other types of generative AI programs can supplement your sales staff. Or, for example, like Canva, which we use for a lot of graphical work, there's AI built into that. So the ability of AI to provide us with a more creative marketing team, or more creative sales reps, or maybe even more well-written sales reps if they're trying to send out email campaigns, using ChatGPT or AI and Canva, for example, are great tools. Where it hasn't been so helpful is in the production of our workflow for our processes, but I know that that's coming. And so hopefully we'll see AI provide us some more assistance in the next year or two as it gets woven into title production systems. And then when I thought about lead gen, and part of what Justin and I had worked on in the past was this idea that maybe there is more lead gen in title than we thought there was. Because mostly, we think about loan officers, real estate agents, and people in the real estate industry that can be like a business-to-business referral partner, where you have to have a relationship, and they need to trust you, and they're going to refer their transactions. And it's all about that long-term game of trying to get to know all of them, create trust and establish a relationship, and that's how you solidify your business. But what if there was a way to get transactional leads that give you a hot button talking point to be able to introduce yourself to somebody and say, we've done work on these transactions in the past, we'd love to handle them again. Maybe there's a way that you can kind of work in a discount for having already provided services on a property. So this idea of lead generation as related to real estate transactions that we've worked on in the past was kind of a new concept that surprisingly we hadn't thought of before. And so that was kind of a cool new feature that Hot Leads was able to bring to the table. And from there, I was just going to mention email automation. It's one of those things that we do more kind of like newsletter style automation, and we try to customize as much as we can to the local market, the local team. And so it's more micro automation than it is kind of a macro, automation platform.
Yeah, and there's so many tools out there, and you touched on a number of them, Jonathan, that I think are worth exploring. And it's a great segue to the next part of the presentation or discussion here. And Justin, obviously, lead gen, to Jonathan's point, in tech, AI, right? It's so encompassing. He's moved his team to a different CRM. I know Justin and I both use HubSpot in our organizations as our CRM. Who on this audience today has a CRM? If you could just do us a favor and participate in the poll. And it looks like we're trending 50. Are we going to get to 50-50? There we go, 40-60. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate you participating, extremely helpful. So let's turn the page. And Justin, we've talked about lead gen and a ton of sales initiatives, right? Jonathan's done a wonderful job of laying out some of his playbook. Why don't you talk to the audience and provide them some insights into driving revenue, right? All things encompassing sales enablement. The floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, thanks, David. Jonathan, I think that was a good point. I see all types of sophistication levels with title agents across the country, large and small. And, I think Jonathan and his team are kind of on the cutting edge. So, kudos to you. And we appreciate your business. Jonathan's been working with us before we even had a product in market. So appreciate that. So I organize these bullet points in order of progression. The foundation is relationships and managing those relationships in a productive way. I can speak from my experience. When I was at OtterBox, we needed to get our boxes on shelves at retailers. So we needed to build relationships with distributors that manage logistics for those real retailers. Once we got the black case on the shelf at AT&T, we needed to get on Verizon's wall with the black and the pink case, for instance. We mined those channels. When they hired a new sales rep, I made sure to cozy up with them. When we hired a new sales rep, we made sure they had contacts that were relevant to grow our relationships and new ones. Title, it's very similar, but your channel partnerships might vary market to market, but having a system to organize contacts and reminders to stay in touch are crucial. Here at Razi and other startups I've worked at, I've learned the value of persistence. I asked ChatGPT to put some data to what persistence means, and it told me on average it's the 6th email, it's the 8th cold call when you get a response that you're looking for. This can be hard to manage without using digital marketing. So to help you automate some of those touch points with a new prospect, creating content like this webinar or using AI to create white papers relevant to lenders or brokerages or other key contacts in a meaningful way to drive awareness. You'll want to use links and download buttons in those emails to help you track who's engaging and prioritizing future outreach based on that engagement. Digital marketing gets even smarter when you're able to enrich your contacts with meaningful target data, like hot leads and other market intelligence tools. So if you want to go to the next slide, Lindsay. I'll show you a quick demo of hot leads in just a moment. However, I wanted to set the table a little bit on how to think about operationalizing the data we provide. It's just a tool to help your sales organization to be more productive. We've seen one-person sales teams and large sales teams both be productive, but it requires a strategy to Jonathan's point. First, you want to identify who received the leads and whether you handle it on an automated or a manual basis. If you want to automate tasks for creation for your sales team or trigger automated emails, you need a CRM or a partner. We've worked with Bo Digital and recommend their services if you want to go that route. If your team is small, you can manage our leads manually fairly easily. We'll share some of the data on our success stories at the end of the demo. However, and share like how many leads you can expect based on your size. But for a case in, for instance, for one of our smaller clients, he sees about 3 leads per day and simply sends a relevant email to the listing agent and sometimes the seller in the morning, and in the afternoon they'll follow up with a quick follow-up call and then set a task for 30 days down the road to re-engage once the closing gets closer. And with that, if you do decide to outsource, make sure you have like budgets in mind and tasks and deliverables. Otherwise, your spend could go out for nothing. But those are just some setting of the table. I wanted to show you a quick demo here. I know we're coming up on time, so I'll kind of drive through this pretty quickly. If you want to go to the next slide, Lindsay, thank you. So here at Razi, we have this philosophy that we think no title agent should lose an order for a property they previously closed on. We know everybody's got their referral sources. They might be real estate agents, lenders, builders, developers. The properties that you previously closed on should be a referral type. And I'll show you what we mean here on the next slide. So if you think about how a transaction happens, you'll close on the property 5 years ago. The homeowner moves up in the world, they have another kid, they decide to go ahead and list this property back on the market. Razi automatically notifies you when that happens. So if you go to the next slide, Lindsay. We basically send you an email every morning telling you which properties went on the market overnight. We give you some valuable insight on the property data, and then ultimately we detail which brokerage and agent are handling that property now and their contact information. And what people are really utilizing this data for is to like turn a cold call into a warm call, instead of me calling out as like hey, I'm Justin with Land Grant Title. We've been in Columbus for 20 years. We value customer experience. The calls and the emails that we're seeing folks be successful with have turned into like, hey, this is Justin with Land Grant Title. We saw you listed, 123 East Main Street yesterday. Photos look great. We provided the title work on this property 5 years ago and have all that back title information. We should be able to make this, a quick and smooth closing for everybody and maybe save some costs. And what we're finding is more times than not, people are able to make a new relationship with a real estate agent they hadn't worked with previous, earn that first transaction and build that relationship moving forward. And I can share some of the data we found doing interviews with our current clients if you go to the next slide. So, the data point that we found was that for every 500 properties you've closed on in the last 10 years, you should see 1 new lead per month. We work with people as small as like they've been in market for 4 years, they've done 2,000 closings over those 4 years, and they're seeing ROI out of the system. We also work with large national clients that, they've been in business for 25 years. They're doing more than 500,000 closings over that time period, and order of magnitude, law of large numbers. The more properties you close, the more leads you'll see from us. You know, depending on if it's a a seller-driven market, a split market, a buyer's market, we're seeing anywhere between a 12 to 25% conversion rate conservatively. And the way we price is based on the number of properties that we index. So that's a peek into how the tool works, some of the data and success stories we've seen. And so with that, I want to leave some time for questions. And yes, we do have our own CRM that we're putting into market this month, and excited to share that in the future.
Breaking news. I love it. One last poll. Would you be interested in a demo of Razi's Hot Leads in CRM? If everyone could do me a favor, and I know your time is extremely valuable, and we are a minute over. Justin, thank you, by the way. That was awesome. And the only thing I will say, a warm lead is a heck of a lot better than a cold lead. So check out Justin and the team and what they've got rolling. Here we go. So with that, if there's any questions, I know we're over time a minute here, but we wanted to keep this at a nice clip. Hopefully it was extremely informative. Feel free to drop in any questions here. And if you have any, feel free to take them offline. Justin, this is a copy of this that'll be available for everybody. Lindsay, you're amazing. Thank you for helping with this. Jonathan, congrats again on all your success. You built a wonderful business. You're a terrific person, and we really appreciate you taking the time today to share insights. And it was just extremely valuable for me. So thank you. And Justin, you and the team, again, thank you. And last but not least, by any means, everybody that took the time today to come on this call, thank you. Good luck with the rest of your day. We appreciate everything. And if you have any follow-up you need, feel free to reach out. With that, we are signing off on our Thursday webinar, Skyrocket Your Lead Gen and Sales. Justin, Jonathan, Lindsay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Appreciate everyone.